Hello and welcome to the podcast. This is Ron's Amazing Stories. We have stories that should thrill you a little and chill you a little.
It's amazing.
What you'll hear are adventures sent in by you guys, classic stories from the pulp mags, and episodes from the golden age of radio. We have special segments like Ghost Stories with Sylvia.
That's amazing.
And These Are Your Stories. So settle in for the next hour and enjoy the show. One more thing. You just might want to prepare yourself to be taken away from today.
Another 5-minute mystery.
This 5-minute mystery is being brought to you by Ghost Stories with Sylvia and the word creepy.
Can't beat that combination.
No, you can't. And once more, why would you even want to try?
I couldn't agree more.
Good. Here is today's story.
Inspector Harris speaking. Yes? What? Gregory Thorndyke murdered? What's the address? Yes? Yes, I'll be right over.
Inspector Harris is here, gentlemen.
Oh, yes, Oliver. Show him in.
This way, sir.
How do you do, Inspector Harris? Won't you come in? I'm James Thorndyke, and this is my cousin, Robert Latimer.
How do you do?
Hello?
Mr. Thorndyke, the coroner tells me your father died of stabbing.
That's right, Inspector. He'd been stabbed right through the heart.
Who discovered the body?
I did, sir.
Yes, Oliver?
It was around 8 this morning. I was taking up Mr. Thorndyke's breakfast, as I do every morning, and found poor Mr. Thorndyke with that knife sticking in him.
I see. Who was the last one to see him alive?
Well, I guess I am. I brought up Uncle's milk last night before I went to bed.
What time was that?
About 9:15.
And the coroner informs me he was killed about 11. Where were you three last night at about 11?
At 11? Why, I was at the movies.
Did anyone see you there?
No, not that I know of.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Latimer?
I'd gone to bed early last night, around 9. I slept right through the entire night until Oliver woke me this morning.
Well, Oliver, where were you at 11?
I was taking a walk. I felt a little groggy and wanted to get some fresh air.
I suppose no one saw you.
I'm afraid not, Inspector.
Well, this is swell. I've got 3 suspects, and all have flimsy alibis. One of you is lying, and I intend to... What's that?
Oh, that must be my alarm clock. I set it last night before I went to bed. Pardon me, I'll be right back.
What time is it, Mr. Thorndyke?
Time? Why, it's 10, exactly 10 o'clock.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Inspector. I must have forgotten to turn off the alarm this morning when Oliver woke me.
Yes, Latimer. And that forgetfulness is going to land you in the chair.
What do you mean?
I mean that I'm arresting you for the murder of Gregory Thorndyke.
How does the inspector know that Robert Latimer is the murderer? In a moment, we'll give you the solution, but first...
I guess we have to remember that these stories were made in the 1940s.
And why is that important?
Well, you see, alarm clocks then didn't know the difference between AM and PM.
So 10 a.m. and 10 p.m. were the same thing.
That's right.
Wrong. Thank you for telling us. Bloody nothing.
Well, but I just solved the case.
You keep thinking that.
BG, you remind me why we let people say motel backwards.
Why is that?
You just let them.
Why do I even show up?
I often wonder the same thing.
And now, back to the inspector.
Mr. Latimer, you said that you went to bed at 9 last night, and that you slept right through the entire night.
But it's the truth.
I am afraid you're wrong, Latimer. The alarm clock just proved that. If you had gone to bed at 9 last night and set your alarm clock for 10, as you told me, it wouldn't have gone off at 10 this morning, but at 10 o'clock last night. Yes, Latimer, you murdered your uncle. and we'll soon get the story out of you at headquarters.
See? What did I tell you?
That has to be one of the lamest excuses for a mystery plot.
Now, BG, you can't make fun of something that's 80 years old.
The bloody heck I can't.
Well, you shouldn't.
Give me one good reason why not.
It belittles the construct of the story, and I might add, the podcast.
You don't need me for that. You do that all by yourself.
Hello, and welcome to the podcast. Sylvia Shults is back, and we have some more great ghost stories for you. I know. This time, Sylvia and I bring you the creepiest stories we've ever heard.
How fun!
I'm glad you think so. We also chat a bit about the upcoming month of spooky, reminisce about the story of Lizzy Borden, and tell a few short story gems.
What is that?
Well, you'll just have to wait and see.
I can do that.
Good. Now, this from Audible. Today's podcast is being brought to you by Audible.com. Get a free audiobook and a 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/Ron's Amazing Stories. They have over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, computer, Kindle, whatever you have, you can listen to Audible on it. So, what am I listening to right now? 44 Years in Darkness. A true story of madness, tragedy, and shattered love, narrated by Kendall Steele. What makes this audiobook so special isn't just the story, but that it was written by our very own Sylvia Shults, who will join us later on in the show. In the latter part of the 19th century, Rhoda Deary spent over 40 years in the Adams County poor farm, curled in a fetal position, locked away in a box bed. She had clawed her own eyes out and beaten her front teeth in. Her legs had atrophied to the point where she could no longer stand on her own or even sit in a wheelchair. She had been committed there by her own family and had spent decades locked away from the world. What was her crime? Falling in love. This audiobook examines the social pressures that led to Rhoda's breakdown and her eventual insanity. Then it explores the stories that continue to be told about Rhoda's ghost and her presence at the Peoria State Hospital. You can have Rhoda's story today. Here's what Audible has set up for us. Audible is offering a free audiobook and 30 days for you to check out their service. To download your free audiobook today, go to audibletrial.com/Ron's Amazing Stories. Again, that's audibletrial.com/Ron's Amazing Stories, and you too can have 44 Years in Darkness today. Thank you, Audible. We all love a good story, but what we truly crave is a ghost story. It's time now for Ghost Stories with Sylvia. Sylvia Shults is a librarian and author by day, but at night, she becomes a ghost hunter. Following a lifetime spent in the pursuit of the weird and the strange, her non-fiction works include Ghost of the Illinois River, Fractured Spirits, 44 Years in Darkness, Hunting Demons, and The Spirits of Christmas. We now cross over the veil and join Sylvia as she tells us more tales from the unknown. Sylvia, are you there?
Hello, Ron, come on in.
Sylvia, it is so good to see you.
Oh, man, it's good to see you too. How you been doing?
I'm doing okay. We are on a stretch of really nice weather here in Vancouver, and I gotta say, it's been nice to be able to just relax, not be burned to a crisp, and not be drowned to a rat. So I think we're in a good way right now.
It sounds like it. We had a cold snap over at the beginning of the week. Sunday was very breezy and really kind of chilly, but we are over the cold snap now, and it is absolutely gorgeous here in central Illinois right now.
Yeah, getting ready for Halloween, are you guys?
Yes, there is a house that is pretty close to the Oasis that is just decorated with all sorts of stuff for Halloween. There's a pumpkins galore and some black cats, and I don't know why purple has become a Halloween color, but there's lots of purple in the yard. And I passed it today, and I saw a skeleton chilling out in a hammock in
There
the
you go.
yard. It's just marvelous.
Doesn't get better than that.
Yeah.
Well, I am right now preparing, getting things ready for the month of spooky, and I have a question for you.
All right, what's that?
Okay, every year I do a podcast where I play one of the greatest old-time radio shows in the world, and I think you know where I'm going with this.
Uh-huh.
And
you sent a shiver down my spine with those words.
yeah, so I was thinking that why not play the thing on the Forble board and have you and I react to it like we were in Mystery K 2000.
That sounds so fun.
Now, she didn't know I was going to ask this, folks. Are you in?
I'm in.
All right. So that is what you have to look forward to coming up real soon in the month of spooky is a Mystery K 2000 or 3000, whatever they're on now, version of the thing on the Forble board. Going to be different. You've never heard it this way before. And certainly, I don't know if anybody's tried to do what we're going to attempt. And it could go completely awry.
If it does, then we will have made the attempt. And if it does not go awry, then everyone will have a good time.
Well, that's the plan, is we're going to be listening to that and reacting to it real time. You and I just sitting for a half hour listening to your favorite show on the planet.
Oh, man, that is going to be fun on a bun.
All right. Well, I'm glad you're in. All right, Sylvia, I have something new that I want to try on you.
Okay.
Have you ever heard of short story gems?
I have not.
Okay, well, what they are is stories that are one or two lines at most.
Oh, goodness.
Okay. I have three of them for you. I have one that's rather famous that has made the rounds kind of to set the example of what they are. And then I have two that I found that I'm going to share with you and get your reaction to them.
Oh, perfect.
Okay, so here is an example, a perfect example of a short story gem. You ready?
Ready.
Okay. The last man on earth sat alone in a room. There was a knock at the door. Now, that is a complete story, is it not?
It is.
And it leads to all kinds of questions like, who was at the door? How did he become the last man? You fill in all the blanks.
Your imagination just gets to go wild.
Yep. And that has been the question science fiction authors have been playing with for years.
Oh,
and
yeah.
that is a short story gem. Now, I have another one for you.
Okay.
Okay. Now, this one's a little less subtle, but I think you're going to like it.
Okay.
Okay. There were 2 dates written on the tombstone of a great man. but all that mattered was the little hyphen in between.
Oh.
What'd you think of that one?
Oh, that's sweet.
Isn't that nifty?
That is fabulous. I love it. I love it so hard.
I thought it was pretty great.
Yeah.
All right, I got one more.
Okay.
You ready for this one?
All right.
Now, this one isn't such, well, I'm just going to read it and see what you think.
Okay.
This was written by a gentleman who had a particular fondness for his job. Okay, here we go. I finally found my wife the kidney she needed. It took forever to track down everyone she donated her organs to after the crash.
Oh. Huh. Ooh.
Not as nice as the other two.
That's doing funny things to my brain. Wow.
So, you've never heard of short story gems before?
I've not heard it called that.
Oh, what have you heard
I'm
them
familiar with the one, but I've just I've heard them called 2-sentence stories. But I like short story gems even better because it puts you in mind of just little nuggets of wonderfulness.
Yeah.
That was interesting.
So I attribute that to a serial killer.
Okay, that works.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
but definitely creepy.
Yes.
So
definitely.
All right. Well, Sylvia, we have an email this week, and it comes from, now, you know how we sometimes get interesting places? They're from a very interesting named place.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. And then sometimes we get some very interesting names.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, this time we have an interesting name and an interesting place.
Oh, fun.
Okay. So our email comes from Astrid Devine from Why Not, North Carolina.
Why not indeed?
Why not indeed? Well, you know that whenever we get a strange place, I got to look it up.
Yeah.
Okay, so Why Not was first settled in the 18th century by German and English people. The community originally was spelled with 2 words, why not? The origins of the town's name came from the residents debating about a title for their community. A man finally remarked, "Why not name the town Why Not, and let's go home." And they did.
Let's go home. That's great.
That's how they got the town name of Why Not.
Oh, boy.
Pretty clever if you think about it.
Yeah.
Shall we get to Astrid's email?
All right.
All right, here we go. Hello, Ron and Sylvia. I've never seen a ghost or had any paranormal experiences. I do want to experience something, but I'm scared, so I stay away. I had a friend tell me once that once you've had a ghost experience, it changes you forever. What do you guys say to that? Sylvia?
Ooh. Oh, Astrid, I have a lot to say to that. I have a lot to say about the whole thing. First of all, don't be scared. I mean, it's easy for me to say because I'm interested in this sort of thing. But in my experience, the vast majority of paranormal experiences are not scary at all, or at least the spirits that you're interacting with don't have causing fear on their minds. They are just trying to communicate. Whether or not you interpret that as being something scary, that's really up to you. But so many encounters with the paranormal are simply someone who has passed on trying to communicate with those of us who are still living. And it really is nothing to be afraid of. I like to say ghosts are just people who lived before us. They just happen to have died before we did. That's the only thing that sets them apart, is that they have gone through this death process and we in this lifetime have not. So, yeah, it's not that they're out to scare you. They're just out to communicate with you. And I hope that sets your mind at ease, that if you do have a paranormal encounter sometime, Astrid, that it shouldn't be scary. In fact, some paranormal encounters can be absolutely lovely and very comforting as well.
Mm-hmm.
And that brings me to the second part, is that, yes, it does change you because you can get a glimpse beyond the veil, and you can get a glimpse for yourself that there is something more, something beyond death. And personally, I find that extremely comforting. So yes, I think my paranormal experiences have changed me. They have enriched me.
Okay, but let's go back to young Sylvia. Now, I believe you told me that originally you've had interest in this since you were an absolute little kid.
Yes.
And so,
oh, and Ron, you are going to call me out on this, aren't you?
well, I am a little bit. So Sylvia, well, I'm going to let you take it from there. Because I think I made my point. Let's see if I did.
What Ron is trying to say, everyone, is that when I was a little kid, I was absolutely terrified of ghosts. I devoured ghost stories, but I was terrified of meeting one. I wouldn't walk past a cemetery at night. Oh gosh, I remember there was one time when I was a kid that I was staying the night at a friend's house, and she was staying in a trailer, and the house next door had burned down. And I spent the entire night lying awake with the lights on. I'm sure she was really irritated, just in case there was a ghost lurking around from this fire that nobody died in, but it freaked me out anyway. Yeah, so I was terrified of ghosts when I was a wee one, but then I grew up and I encountered
So
these
what changed?
things for
What
myself.
is the thing that made it change?
The communication and understanding that ghosts are simply people and they are part of history. I loved history so much, even when I was a little kid. And as I grew older, I realized that the ghosts and the history really go hand in hand, because history is stuff that people before us lived through, and the people before us are now ghosts. So history and ghosts are intertwined so that you can't hardly pull them apart.
Well, answering for me is that my change in this, my reason for, gosh, how do I even know how to put it? For me, I was an unbeliever. I was the number one skeptic on the planet. I would take stories like this and go, there's nothing to be afraid of because they're not real.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
You and my husband would get along really well.
Well, at the time, but that isn't true today. But,
right.
But the thing that was different is that I did believe in a spiritual world, a spiritual warfare, if you will, a place where good and evil fought behind the scenes, demons and angels, if you want to give it a title. Mm-hmm. I believed in all of that, but I did not think that people could come to this planet, stay on this planet, and make their wishes known after they had left this planet. Does that make sense?
It does.
And
Absolutely.
So what changed for me? Well, for me, the reason I don't fear those things anymore, and I long to have these experiences, is because, like you said, it gives you a glimpse that not only is there an afterlife, but we're going to be so happy when we get there.
Oh, yes.
And one of the best stories that I ever heard is the story of Rhoda Deering. And you know why? Because it was the line you told me that her life was absolutely miserable. Even after she got into a good environment and people started taking care of her, her life was still misery until she passed. And then what got me was when you told me that you were working with, I believe it was a medium, and Rhoda said, I'm not like that anymore.
Yeah.
And it was something like that. I think I got that right?
Yeah. I know exactly the story you're referring to, yeah.
And so for me, that tells me, okay, Things can be terrible on the earth, but when you get to the other side, it's all going to change. Will it be good and happiness for everybody? I don't know that. But what I do know is that what I've seen and what I've heard, it is nothing to be afraid of.
Mm-hmm.
It is something to be interested in and shared.
Yes.
Now, the stories that we share on Ron's Amazing Stories, most of them are scary, right? I mean, let's just put a fine point on it. Today,
Yeah.
I asked Sylvia today, I said, Sylvia, I want you to find the creepiest story that you could find, and I'll do the same thing. And we're going to get to those in just a little bit. But the reason I think that we tell these creepy stories isn't to scare people. It is, let's be honest, to entertain and to show that there's more out there than meets the eye.
Definitely. Very well put.
So, I don't know if we answered Astra's question. I believe she wants to know if the ghost experience changes you. It does. There's no doubt about that. What do we say about that? It's a good thing. At least for me.
Yeah, I agree.
So, do you have anything else you want to say to Astrid?
Oh, Astrid, I hope that you eventually do have a paranormal experience of your own. And I hope that it is gentle and sweet and non-threatening. And I hope it brings you peace.
Well said. All right, well, so like I mentioned, I challenged Sylvia to bring the creepiest story she could find, and I did the same. So now I am going to roll the dice here, and I have a six-sided dice.
Okay.
And if it comes up 1, 2, or 3, you go first.
Okay.
And if it comes up 4, 5, or 6, I'm going to go first, okay?
Perfect.
Okay, here we go.
All right.
It came up 4.
Okay. Take it away.
All right. Well, the creepiest story that I've ever heard is one that was told on this show, believe it or not. And it was experienced by the Taylors, and I'll tell you more about them later. But they had titled this, The Terror at Alamo Lake. Okay, you ready for the story?
Yes.
Early last year, my wife and I were married. We both loved ghost stories and decided that for our honeymoon, we would travel to known ghost towns of Arizona, something both of us had wanted to do since we started dating. I did definitely anyway. Let me tell you about Arizona's ghost town. Wikipedia lists over 100 of them in our state alone, and this shouldn't come as any surprise. Because of the great gold rush of the 1800s, there were hundreds of these little towns that failed after the gold petered out. But not all of these were of any interest to us, because we wanted to investigate only those with strong paranormal activity.
My kind of folks.
One of these towns was Alamo Crossing. This town was unique because it had nothing to do with the gold rush. Alamo Crossing is a ghost town in Mojave County that was settled in the late 1890s. The town's death was due to it being submerged in order to create Alamo Lake. Many ghostly tales come out of this area, including a woman in white who's said to wander the shores looking for home, which is why we added it to our list. After we were settled at our lodgings, we made the drive out to Alamo Crossing. On first appearance, it's just a lake, but remnants of the town are still visible. Old rusted trucks, scarred buildings, and a fenced-off area where the blacksmith shop were all that was left. We had a great time looking around, but no ghosts. We did have a scare or two as we found some snakes and a coyote's den. We were headed back to the car when I spotted a child sitting near an old pickup. I thought, how strange for a kid to be here. My wife insisted that we go talk to the child to see if it was in any trouble. When we got to the pickup, there was no one there. We looked around, and then a voice came from behind us. I need a ride into town. Can you help me? We both saw You freaked out there. We both turned and saw the child, and while I can't say how my wife felt, my knees almost buckled, and I felt a wave of nausea. What we saw was something right out of Stephen King's Children of the Corn. He stood about 4 feet tall, wore ragged clothes, and had a wide-brim hat like the Quakers wear. However, it was his eyes that drew my attention. They were as black as night and seemed to look right through my soul. There was not a cloud in the sky, and there was no reasons for the child's eyes to be so dilated. In fact, I remember looking at my wife to see if she was seeing this, and how blue her eyes were in contrast.
Mm.
He repeated, "Can you help me?" The voice, it was so creepy. I wanted to run and felt the urge to do so, but it was my wife that spoke. "What's wrong, honey?" With that, the boy turned and started to walk towards our car. We both looked at each other and followed. When we arrived, the boy just pointed again and repeated, "Can you help me?" Warning bells went off in my head. A voice was screaming, "You cannot help this child. Get in the car and drive away now." My wife reached out for the child. He immediately recoiled, started screaming, and then ran around our car in circles. It was a crazy sight. With each passing, the revolution, he went faster and faster. Finally, he broke off his orbit and ran into the scrubland. We tried to follow, but it was as if he had vanished. We got in our car and drove out of there. It was shortly after dark when we arrived at our motel. As we got to our cabin, the little boy was waiting for us. He made some gestures that indicated he was hungry and pointed to our cabin. I'd had enough of this point and flat out told him to go away and not come back. His eyes darkened. How was that even possible? I have no idea. He stormed away, obviously frustrated. I don't know why, but after he was gone, I felt like as if a part of me had been taken. I still feel that way today, even weeks later. My wife has told me that she only feels dread and knows that someday that little boy will be back. This thought scares us both, and we stay vigilant in watching for that little devil. One last thought on this, probably not related. A few weeks after this event, we found out that we were pregnant with a boy.
Ooh.
Logan Taylor, Yuma, Arizona. Now, I can honestly say that is the creepiest story I've ever had on the podcast, without a doubt.
I was waiting for that postscript. I really honestly was. I'm like, a few weeks later, that is deeply, deeply creepy. That reminds me of a Black Eyed Kids encounter, but most encounters with Black Eyed Kids don't last this long. And they're not this detailed.
Well, this particular story, when it ran, got more oohs and ahs from my listeners going, I don't know if that story should be told. And here I am telling it again. But you know what? It is just there's no way that this isn't true. There is no way. There's nothing in here that's paranormal. Think about it for just a minute. Is there anything there paranormal other than feelings?
Not really. No.
There isn't. I mean, how did the kid get to the motel is the only thing that's unexplainable.
Yeah.
That's it.
And the running around the car is kind of weird.
It's weird, but
it's not paranormal.
It depends. I mean, how fast was fast? We weren't there. I mean, in your mind, you can see this kid going and then peeling off and disappearing. Okay, that could be paranormal, or it could be just a kid running really, really fast. But that's what bothers me about this story. That's what creeps me out about this story is the fact there's really nothing paranormal about it.
Mm-hmm.
And there are inferences like she's pregnant with a boy. How did he get to the motel? But that is just one heck of a story. And I've never had anything like it since. And I've never heard anyone tell one quite like it. Ever. And this was, I think, this one played in 2019, somewhere around there. Maybe even 2018. I'm not sure. It still is, to me, the most creepiest. I've had stories that are stranger, but in creepiness, this one takes the cake.
Yeah, that is spine tingling.
Yeah. So any thoughts on it? Do you think it was a black-eyed kid, or do you think it was something else?
Oh, I definitely think it was a black-eyed kid.
Again, they're usually seen at night.
Right, yeah. It's very rare to see them in the day, but it follows that pattern of the kid asking for help, wanting to come inside the cabin. So, yeah. And the fact that his eyes are black, I don't know if... It seems to me like a BEK encounter.
Yeah, I agree. But not like one I've ever heard.
No. It's so detailed and it lasted for so long. Yeah. And I think, aren't they usually barefoot?
Yeah, they didn't mention anything. They mentioned ragged clothes.
Yeah, dressed really inappropriately for the weather.
Yeah, and they mentioned the hat.
The hat, yeah.
Yeah, Quaker's hat, and that's kind of different. I've never heard that on a black-eyed kid story before.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I'm still calling this the creepiest story we've ever had on the podcast. There you have it. That's my creepiest story. Sylvia, you're up.
Okay. Well, Ron, when you asked me to find a creepy story, I've got loads. It was really hard to pick just one. I have stories that are horribly gruesome that I'm not even going to share on the radio because it's deeply inappropriate. I have stories of quiet dread.
Oh, boy.
But I finally settled on this one because this is a true straight-up ghost story. It's not a premonition or anything. This is a legit ghost story. So the title of this one is They Were Never the Same Again.
That leads into Astrid's email. Okay, what do you got for us?
Okay. This incident took place in the very early hours of April 24th, 1980, and this story comes from the Bridgewater Triangle. Bridgewater, Massachusetts is, we've talked about it before on the show. It is an extremely paranormally active area.
Yeah, and I did a little research after we talked about that, and the place is covered. It's loaded with limestone in that area. I don't know.
That has a lot to do with it.
Anyway, that's off the point. But
anyone
that knows anything about, that's one of the triggers for paranormal events is limestone.
It certainly is, yes, and for a very good reason. So anyway, these three guys were living in a rented home, and they had an event happen to them that would change their lives forever. As the three boys slept in their respective rooms, there was a loud crash, and one of the boys felt a body come crashing down on top of him. At first, he thought it was just one or both of his roommates fooling around, and he tried to push them off him and told them to stop messing around. He was half asleep at that point. He opened his eyes and realized it wasn't either of his roommates. He went into a complete panic. He was scared to death and started to scream uncontrollably. Both of his roommates heard the screams and came running. When they turned on the light in this kid's room, they saw a charred body lying on top of their friend. That's why he was screaming, because he was face to face with this thing. They said they could actually smell the burned flesh of the corpse, and it looked like the body was wearing a flight suit. The boys thought it might have been, they thought it was a real person. They thought it might have been a pilot from the nearby South Weymouth Naval Air Station who had ejected from an aircraft. Suddenly, the body disappeared. And all three of them were completely terrified. The next morning, while watching the news, they saw that there was a failed attempt to rescue the American hostages in Iran. During Operation Eagle Claw, 8 airmen burned to death when a helicopter and a transport plane collided in the desert. Yeah.
It disappeared on them.
Yeah. Just poof, vanished. Yeah.
Okay. Now who's got chills? Good grief.
Yeah.
How do you not be changed by something like that? Oh,
exactly.
It's turning out Astrid Divine's email is definitely coming to the forefront here.
That was definitely a good idea to read that one for sure.
So I guess we should say to Astrid, it's not all like this all the time.
Right? Yeah. This is a one-off.
Yeah, and I really hope you don't have a black-eyed kid come find you in the middle of the
Not
desert.
like that, no.
Wow.
No.
So that's interesting. A great story.
Thank you.
That I'm going to give that a creepy factor of 10. Was there any? I mean, you probably don't know, but was there any residual left behind? Like, do you have any idea? There was like charred.
I don't think so. I would imagine that they don't say anything about the smell suddenly disappearing as well, just the body disappearing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's possible that stench continued in the room for a little while, lingered.
That's crazy, crazy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it'd be interesting to look at the history of the people in that crash and maybe compare where they were from. You know, how did they live?
Yeah, maybe one of them was from Massachusetts.
I'm just saying, it just seems like there's some research that could be done there to maybe even tie that up a little tighter and give it a little more oomph to it, a little more, historical significance.
Yeah.
Pretty great. Wow. All right, Sylvia. So out of those two stories, which one do you think was creepier?
Mine.
Well, I'm going to vote for mine. So I guess we'll have to ask the listeners to send in their comments and say which one they thought was creepier.
I think that's a great idea.
All right. So why don't you guys do that? Just drop me a note. Go to ronsamazingstories.com, click on that contact and say that you thought that the terror at Alamo Lake was much creepier than Sylvia's story.
Oh, and there's also going to be people that really enjoy their life. They were never the same again. And they will think that story was much, much, much creepier.
Oh, okay. Well,
we'll just have to see.
All right. Well, there's $1 in it for everyone that says my story's creepier.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Feeling flush, are we?
Yeah, so let's see. We figure 83,000 people listen to this show, so okay, maybe not $1. In fact,
a jewel in your heavenly crown.
There we go, jewel in heaven. I like that. Okay, yeah. Points in heaven. That's what you'll get if you write in and say my story was better.
Yeah.
All right, Sylvia. Well, that was some good stuff. I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed the two stories. And I especially like telling that story because I can just imagine what people are thinking as you read it, When you're telling a story, I always think, okay, I can't wait for them to hear this part. I guess that's what makes me a storyteller.
I think that's exactly right. And that is the feeling I get when I do my library talks.
Yeah, I bet.
Oh boy, I can't wait to tell everybody this.
Well, since you have a live audience, though, because we're not getting any feedback other than from each other here, but when you're telling a story live in one of your libraries, do you watch the people when they're talking? Do you sit and see how they're reacting to what you're telling them?
Absolutely. I did one Zoom presentation. It was after lockdown, but it was last October, and we were still doing a lot of Zoom stuff. I did one, and I'm like, never again. And it was a good one too. It was Lizzy Borden.
Oh yeah.
And I didn't have that visual feedback from the audience. So it was very, very difficult for me to do that talk. I'm like, is anyone still listening? I can't hear anything because of course all their mics were muted.
Yeah.
Because it was a Zoom call and I was the presenter. But yeah, it was like talking to an empty room, and it was very uncomfortable.
Okay, so didn't you
not something I want to do again.
Yeah, didn't you recently do Lizzy Borden again, at a live audience?
I did. I did it in Rockford, and everyone loved it. And people came up to me afterwards saying, I had no idea about the history. All you hear about is the crime, but you never think of what led up to all that crime.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. And I'm doing it again in October at the Peoria Library.
Lizzy Borden again?
Yeah.
It's a creepy story.
Oh, yeah.
So I the first time I was that I had any experience with that story was the gal from Bewitched, Elizabeth Montgomery, I think her name is.
Yeah.
And her rendition of it. And I remember when I watched it, I was a kid, I was young. And I remember watching that going, that can't really happen, can it? And it did. And when I found out,
guess what?
when I found out it was real and that there were real people and there was a big, there was a big trial and it all happened probably not quite like they showed it on TV, but but it was pretty amazing stuff.
Oh, it is. Yeah, I was the first time I learned about Lizzy Borden. It was a babysitter that told me the story.
Oh, no.
Yes. Oh, it was a friend of the family, and yeah, it was the younger of the two sisters that was babysitting me and my sister, and I think we were 7 and 4, or maybe 8 and 5, and I was an 8-year-old, and this older girl laid this story on me out of the blue. I'm like, what? No, this has to be made up. And then I found out as I got older that no, it's not made up. It actually happened. Yeah.
Well, let me ask you a question that I've always wondered about that whole thing. The song, the poem, whatever you want to call it.
She heard it. Lizzy Borden heard that song being sung about herself. And there are many more verses than just the little ditty that we remember today. There were lots more verses, and they were really mean. Yeah.
So who created that? Is there any...
Oh, we have no idea. It's just...
So it was one of those folklore things that just somebody started and it just kept getting built upon?
Yeah, a little jump rope rhyme that kids came up with. And they repeated it in the street outside of Maplecroft, outside of the home that Lizzy moved to with Emma after the trial. So yeah, she would have heard kids in the street singing this little ditty about her, and she would have realized it. Yeah.
When she saw what she had done, she gave her father 41.
Yeah. And yeah, there are more verses to it than that.
That's the one I always remember.
Yeah. Yeah,
that is amazing. You wonder, because of the song, did most people think that it was just folklore, that it wasn't an event that happened?
I'm sure that later on, decades later, people heard the song because it's a catchy little tune, and people that did not live in Fall River might have heard it, obviously, because I heard it in Illinois. And I really think that went a long way towards lulling people into the thought that, cute little song, ha, ha, ha. And they didn't realize that, yes, this was based on a real person. This was based on 2 real people that lost their lives.
That's fascinating. And I did not know that she heard the ditty.
Yes, I'm afraid so.
Wow. So, was she guilty?
I don't think so.
Okay, well, why do you say that?
There is a much better suspect. There is a fellow named William Borden, who was Andrew Borden's illegitimate son, by a woman named Penelope something or other. Yeah, we don't really have time to go into all the details, but William Borden is a much better suspect for the Borden murders than Lizzy was. I think Lizzy knew that William was in the house, but I don't think that she thought that he would actually attack both Bordens, both of the elder Bordens, and kill them. I think that she just thought that William had come to ask Andrew for money. Because her shock at finding Andrew was genuine. She was devastated. She was Andrew's little girl. And yeah, her shock at finding him brutally murdered was genuine. She was not faking that. And then she did not realize that Abby was still in the house. She thought that Abby had gone out. For various reasons, again, that will take too long to go into here. But yeah, she did not even realize that Abby was still home. So yeah, I don't think that Lizzy knew that there was going to be a murder that day.
Well, such a strange...
Oh, it's a very strange case. It's one of the weirder cases in American true crime.
You know, we should do a podcast on it just to...
We should!
Since you have because you have such a strong background in it, and you can tell us the story, and I think that would be something the listeners would like.
I would love to do that.
Yeah, so have you do your presentation for us so that we can know this entire story.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to put it on the calendar. We're going to do that.
Right on. Okay.
All right. Well, Sylvia, I think we set out to do something here, and I think we did it.
I think we did.
So let's get to what's happening in the life of Sylvia, and I'm going to begin with your blog because I liked what it was about this time.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, so I'm going to read it, and then you can comment on it. You ready?
Sure.
On the day that Judy Garland died, a tornado struck Kansas. Judy Garland was found dead at her London home late on the morning of June 22nd, 1969, 12 days after she had turned 47 years old. An F3 tornado touched down in, I think it's pronounced Saline County, Kansas, on June 21st. 60 people were injured, but no one was killed. The tornado struck at 10:40 p.m. on the 21st, which in London was 4:40 on the 22nd, and the presumed exact time of Garland's death. How about that?
Yeah, when I first came across this little nugget of information that I swiped for Today I Learned, all I saw was on the day Judy Garland died, a tornado struck Kansas. I'm like, no, that can't, no, you're making that up. I call shenanigans on this one. But then I saw it again with the details. I'm like, oh, okay, sure.
You know, and it just dawned on me that we should probably mention that Judy Garland was in a little movie. Oh, I can't remember the name of it. Do you remember the name of it?
Oh, it was based on a children's book, wasn't it?
That's it. Oh, yeah. Wizard of Oz.
Right.
And she was taken from her home in Kansas to the land of Oz by a tornado.
Yes, she was.
So that's the tie-in to this, in case you didn't know that who Judy Garland was.
Yeah.
Most people, I think, know. I think she's going to be one of those timeless people that, you know, that never fade away.
Oh, definitely.
But if there's anyone out there that doesn't know who Judy Garland is, she starred in The Wizard of Oz and was taken away by a tornado to the land of Oz. Anyway, that's your blog this time. What are we looking at in terms of the podcast? How are things going there? I know you told me some stuff.
Yeah, I've got a couple of cemetery episodes coming up. We're going to visit a cemetery deep in the Illinois woods, and then we're going to go a couple of states away into the wilderness of Kentucky and poke around a cemetery there. That's not going to end as well as the visit to the one in Illinois. So stay tuned.
Yeah, so we'll stay tuned for that. The current episode is number 103, and it's the Pennhurst Asylum. So if you want to find out about Sylvia's podcast, head to her site, and we'll have the link in there. But Sylvia, tell us what it is, just so they can go look it up right away if they want.
It is sylviashults.wordpress.com. And if you visit here in the next couple of days or so, I'm going to have an announcement of the 2023 Days of the Dead calendars are available.
Good.
Yeah.
And we're going to push those, right? Every one of us are going to go buy one of those.
Yeah. Make me reorder. No, it's a fun thing. When I was putting together Days of the Dead, a year of true ghost stories, I thought, what would be super cool is to have a calendar. So the last 3 years, I have been putting together a calendar, and there's a story that comes out of May for the May month, and November has a story from the month of November. So that kind of ties into Days of the Dead, and it's a handy wall calendar.
So you can write down when you got to get the kids to soccer practice.
Right.
Yeah. And tell them a ghost story on the way.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. I'm looking forward to those two podcasts. I really am interested in those. I can't wait.
Oh, thank you.
Let's get them published, Sylvia.
Yes, I will. I promise.
All right. Well, Sylvia, do you have any parting things that you want to say to everybody before we shut her down?
Oh, well, we've been talking about creepy stories today, and there are stories out there that make me go, whoa. Okay, that was weird. So, yeah, there's a lot of really strange stuff out there in that big, wonderful world of ours.
Well, it's our job to try to bring them to you, so hopefully we'll bring you some of that strangeness on the next episode of Ghost Stories with Sylvia. Thank you for joining us, Sylvia. It's always a pleasure.
Oh, Ron, thank you very much for the conversation.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Ghost Stories with Sylvia was brought to you by Gladys Goodies. I always have a great time talking with Sylvia, and I learn all kinds of new stuff. If you want to visit her on her home turf, head to sylviashults.wordpress.com. There you will find her blog and access to the podcast Lights Out. I will have links available in the show notes. Thank you, Sylvia. Gladys Goodies treats are a 100% natural, nutrient-rich treat that pets love to eat. You can get your treats and some really cool swag for your dog and cat at GladysGoodies.com. And don't forget to use our very own promo code RONS. That's RONS. And you'll get a 20% discount on all of your purchases. That website again is GladysGoodies.com. I hope you enjoyed this edition of Ghost Stories with Sylvia. Well, that was episode number 560, and I want to thank Sylvia for being with us today. Just a quick reminder that the month of spooky is fast coming, and I really do need your stories. If you want to follow the podcast or the blog, head to ronsamazingstories.com. There you will find any of the links I mentioned and how to contact us. Do you want to help the show? The best thing you can do is to tell your friends all about it, and please leave reviews or feedback wherever you listen. Clicking that follow or like button makes us grow. Thank you for listening, and I hope you come again to find out what are Ron's Amazing Stories.